welcome to the chat. I think I'm gonna wait a minute before I go inside.
Yeah!
My name is Russ Shaw. I'm working on a Saturday, I know. But the good news is, your thoughts are probably thinking, what's in your tape deck, Russ? In this episode, the Dead Kennedys, In God We Trust Incorporated. And this isn't just any old cassette tape. This is on the alternative.
Oh, man, it's too slow.
Tentacles Records. So this is before Dead Kennedys got picked up by IRS somewhere in the mid to late 80s. It's got this whole fold out. Got all the lyrics in here. Jello Bafra wants you to hear his lyrics as this goes off next to me. Vintage 1981. There is 8 songs. 8 songs on the whole EP on one side of the tape, and the other side of the tape is blank, with a fun little message for the major labels out there in the world. In God We Trust Incorporated. Amazing album. Jello Bafra is the lead singer, kind of creative brain behind the Dead Kennedys. How did the Dead Kennedys get their name? Well, Jello has said in a number of interviews that the name came from, after the Kennedy assassinations, this country, the United States, just kind of became more and more a slave to corporations at that time. And I thought that was pretty, the guy is pretty thoughtful. He's got, that's another thing I love about punk rock is guys like Jello and Henry Rollins, there's just a number of names I could go through. But people who are raging against, right, so to speak, the way that things just are. You come to this certain point in your life as a human being and you go, why the heck are things like this? And that's why I appreciate guys like Jello Bafra. That's not right. His real name. He named himself that. Jello, of course, after the wonderful product Jello. And then Bafra, which is a country that doesn't exist anymore in Nigeria that was taken over for whatever reason. I don't know that entire history, but it affected Jello enough to change his last name to that. So, interesting. If you've ever listened to the Dead Kennedys, you know they have some songs that, right? And this album, I want to focus on this album because there's a lot of railing against Christian nationalism in the 80s. 1981. This is way before its time. Speaking of Christian nationalism, back then it was just the unkindness, the corporateness, the rich people, and it doesn't even make sense if you read the Christian story, a lot of the corporate sort of rich people, political Christian nationalists, they are the Pharaoh, right? They don't even realize it. They are the occupying power of an oppressive regime. That is what it is. If you go back to the Bible, Jesus is living in an occupied, oppressive political situation, right? Where you're talking about the poor and not having money. Jesus himself is like approached by a tax collector and he's like, I got nothing, man. There's like a fish down there, might have a coin in his mouth. Have a little faith, buddy, right? Care who you vote for. I really don't. I understand that a lot of people like rebellion against the Democratic, and I get that, man, more than you know. I didn't vote for Kamala, all right? I didn't vote for Trump either. So I get it. I understand why people are upset. But Christian nationalism in the 80s, America, or the United States, is a Christian country, and it should be defended as such. And so you start to see these attitudes towards immigrants, right? Towards other religions, people who don't jump on board with the Christian faith, and the conservative sort of Republican, especially at the time in the early 80s, definition of it, right? And then you have the attitudes towards women, and just don't get me started on all of that. So this album is sort of a temper tantrum in that regard. Corporate interests and just the hypocrisy of incredibly wealthy people to have this sort of, there's a song right about Disney, Mickey Mouse sitting there. My wife loves Disney. Some of her early childhood kind of safe place feels when she was a kid in Disneyland. So, but I get it, right? I understand what he's reeling and railing against. But one of the biggest things in that, and that some people don't, like I've heard people talk about, well, the biggest hit, so to speak, on that album was Nazi punks fuck off, right? Nazi punks, fuck off. The reason why that song was a thing is because, at the time you've got the band coming in, black drummer, right? People of not so much white ethnical orientation in the band, and this is also a time when racist people call themselves skinheads, and I got my head's shaved. I'm not, right? I'm an old punk guy from back in the day. I'm not a freaking racist. So to differentiate from Nazi punks, right? Nazi punks can fuck off. So Nazi punks would show up at shows and cause all sorts of havoc. And I thought that was a great way of pushing back against punk rock becoming, something gross. But I don't think punk rock would have ever, it had to happen eventually. Punk is a lifestyle, it's a thought, it's a way of not conforming. It's anti-fascism, and if there isn't, you want to talk about fascism, racism, right? Organized racism is about as fascist as you can get. The song, I think another one of them was California Uber Alles, was like the song that some of the Nazi punks thought had to do with that, right? And he had to come out and say, no, it's about California becoming more and more fascist as it went. And as another thing I appreciate about Jello is, as California went more liberal, it was still very fascist or anti the poor and the working class and the homeless, right? And I think that's a big part of the election that just happened with the Democrats. Joe Biden standing up there going, "Hey, the stock market's doing really good. Why isn't everybody all happy?" Because people can't afford groceries. People can't afford to fly anymore to go visit their families across the country, buy fuel, to buy a car, and to buy a home in this country anymore. It's just got worse and worse and worse, and here we are, with a Christian nationalist president. That's what's going on. Okay, you could argue that he's not, some people say, well, he's okay, but whatever. I'm not going to argue with Trumpers on this here channel. But when it comes to the dead Kennedys, that's what this album is railing against. It is a fantastic piece of punk rock history, and Jello is an interesting, creative kind of dude. I don't. He has a YouTube channel now, and it goes back as a throwback to Alternative Tentacles, right? That's the name of the channel. If you want to check out Jello's channel, he also went through some stuff. He's not an angel, right? He, of course, offensive. A lot of offensive stuff, but he also didn't pay his bandmates for a number of years. They got picked up by IRS Records, which is sort of, you know, record label that, you know, the early rappers and stuff, they would go after artists who were more controversial, and they called it IRS, which I thought was pretty interesting and funny. But they're a major label, and you know, a lot of people you know, accused Jello for selling out when he went to IRS, and it's like, whatever. But that's money coming in, and when they started making that kind of money, yeah, things get, you bring money into it, and Jello, sitting on his throne of self-righteousness, had to be sued by his own bandmates for them to be paid, which isn't cool, right, man? So I don't know what happened with that, and I don't know if Jello even has talked about it on his channel. I just discovered that he has a channel, doing a little research for this video. Thanks for watching. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say. Subscribe if you're not. Give this video a like. It's right down there. It's just a little piece of effort that you could do that would satisfy my my punk rock soul and heart and its shriveling self-image. I'm fine. I'll be fine. Later. Bye.